Well, hello once again. This is me, Leonard Wells, broadcasting as usual from Haslingden, north of Manchester in the UK, on Tuesday, the 3rd of January 2012. I returned home yesterday from a short holiday in Romania, in Bucharest, the capital. I had been there for 10 days over Christmas and the New Year. As usual, I travelled from Manchester Airport because it's the only practical airport that I can reach to catch a flight out to Romania. At the moment, there are no direct flights from Manchester to Bucharest. You have to fly either KLM or Air France or Lufthansa. Now, I've now travelled 8 times, and each time, of course, you have to change planes. In Paris, if you go Air France, in Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, if you go KLM, if you go Lufthansa, you can either change planes in Dusseldorf, or Munich, or Frankfurt, I believe. And I have now travelled 8 times in total, 4 times on KLM and Air France, and 4 times on Lufthansa. The reason I changed to Lufthansa was because, first of all, out of 4 return trips, my bag did not arrive when I did. Once on Air France, coming from Paris, it didn't arrive with me, and it didn't arrive for 4 more days. And once, on the way out, it didn't arrive in Bucharest from Amsterdam. And I discovered on this trip, on those 2 trips rather, that in fact the airlines know the minute you're on the plane whether your bag's on the plane or not. Because they like to know the other way around, particularly if the bag is on the plane and you're not, in which case they remove your bag for obvious security reasons. But I discovered that they know in fact the other way around as well, that if your bag's not on the plane and you are, they know when you get on the plane. Whether they check it, I don't know, but of course they don't let you know while you're on the plane, because if they told you on the plane, you might create a song and dance, if you know what I mean. Well, it was a good trip because of the timings on Lufthansa via Munich. It means I don't need to take a taxi from Haslingden to Manchester Airport, which costs £30 plus any tip I might give the driver each way. Total of at least £64, £65, £66 or so, which is quite a chunk out of the total fare of slightly less than 200 for a return distance of 3,500 miles. In addition, the arrival hours are quite handy also, because on the way out via Munich, I was able to arrive at approximately 6:30 Bucharest time, and Bucharest is 2 hours ahead of the UK. And on the way back, leaving Bucharest at 7 o'clock Bucharest time, which was actually 5 o'clock UK time, I was actually back in Manchester Airport by 10:30. Although because of having to catch a train and then a bus to Haslingden, I didn't actually reach home until nearly 1 o'clock. So it took me 5 hours to do 1,750 miles by plane, but 2.5 hours to do some 35 miles by bus and train. So I had a very good time in Bucharest. It was cold, but it was dry, no snow or rain, some fog. And the interesting part for me was on the return trip, which was yesterday morning. And I had to be up at the equivalent of 1:30 a.m. in order to catch it. Well, its route from Bucharest to Munich was over Salzburg and the Alps. It was a clear, sunny day with bright blue sky. It was early morning, and as we flew over the Alps, the mountains, the view was absolutely stunning, and I only wish that I'd had my little movie camera in my pocket and could have taken a picture, a video, to show you. But the view was magnificent. You could see in all directions incredible mountains with nice snow-capped peaks. And the thoughts that went through my mind were as follows. I just spent 10 days in Romania. I was flying for a total of some 5 hours back to Manchester. But these mountains had taken some 20 or more million years in which to form. And the Alps were formed because the African plate, and I'm now talking about plate tectonics, as you know, the Earth's land surface consists of a number of plates which float on the molten interior of our Earth, and over time have moved, ever so slowly of course, incredibly slowly, in different directions. The African plate has moved north and bumped up against Europe. When it did so, it swung Spain around and formed the Bay of Biscay. At that point in time, the Mediterranean was dry, and Africa, pushing up against the European plate, formed the Alps. It crushed the land surface, and like sort of roll-up newspaper, as you squeeze it, it tended to sort of wrinkle up. And this is what's happened with the Alps. And of course, in the case of the Himalayas, or the Himalayan mountains, Mount Everest, it was India pushing up against Asia, which has raised the Himalayas. And Mount Everest, of course, being the tallest mountain on Earth, owes its height to the power of the Indian subcontinent pushing up against Asia. Now, looking down on the Alps, the thoughts that went through my mind were like this. They actually found fossils high up in the Alps of sea creatures. Clear evidence that at one time the top of the Alps had been below sea level. And it was a long time before somebody discovered plate tectonics, which of course then explained everything. Now, the Mediterranean, which is a huge sea, incredible area of sea, was dry, as was the Black Sea. And what happened was, how did it come to get filled with water? As the African plate pushed up against Europe, the land link between Spain and North Africa, because there was one at that point in time, broke. And then we had the biggest waterfall in the planet Earth's history, which took 100 years for the sea, the ocean from the Atlantic, to flow in to the Mediterranean dry land. and raise it to the level it is now. Enormous amount of water. It took 100 years to fill. And same, of course, then it carried on and filled the Black Sea. So quite an interesting story. And the time elements involved, my 5-hour flight and the millions of years taken to build the Alps, construct the Alps by pushing against the European plate by Africa, I started to think about the history of Europe and the peoples of Europe and how they fared. And as we approached Salzburg, I thought, well, not far from Salzburg was the house which had been built for Hitler high up in the mountains, called the Berghof at Berchtesgaden. And the story has it, well, in fact it's true, it's a true story, that the day before war was declared by Britain, Hitler and his party were looking out from the balcony, the sort of patio balcony, if you like, on top of the Berghof in Berchtesgaden. And one lady noticed that all of the clouds had suddenly gone a bright red colour. And she said this was a terrible omen of doom, of blood, and war, and all kinds of dreadful things. And she said to Hitler, we must try to prevent this. And apparently he replied, as I understand it, if it must be now, let it be now. If it has to be, let it be now, rather. And so he plunged the world into war, and another 50 million people died. And I thought, most of the countries that we know are formed by accident over time. Like Switzerland was formed largely because of the Alps. It was sort of cut off, if you like, and isolated. And many of the countries were formed by accident. And when you think about the EU and the 27 countries in it and the problems with the Eurozone, it is remarkable, actually, a remarkable story. Because for 2,000 years, up to date, since the time of Christ, Europeans have done nothing but kill each other and kill the blacks in the slave industry, as we knew it, kill millions of, well, thousands of Chinese in the Opium Wars when we forced China to accept our opium, which we grew commercially, specifically to sell to poor misbegotten Chinese people. We caused a lot of suffering. I began to think that it's all accidental, really, the way we are. And for 50 years, the EU has kept peace. Well, more than 50 years now. And there is a chance that if we form a United States of Europe, which is my dream, not many people have this dream, but I do, then we can look forward to 2,000 years of peace. When instead of killing and destruction, we can have peace, a golden age, when hopefully we can banish war, we can protect ourselves, because you are allowed to protect yourselves and defend yourselves. We could protect ourselves. We could fight anybody apart from the United States, who could wipe us out with nuclear weapons. But nobody else would be able to fight us. Even, well, Russia could probably do it with their atomic weapons. But Europe would be so strong. I mean, as it is now, the gross domestic product of the EU is already almost as great as China and the United States combined. So if the remaining countries on the fringes of Europe, and in the Balkans, for example, if they all came in, and Turkey, we would be the most powerful bloc on the planet. And it would be a golden age, and we could hand this on to our children and grandchildren with high hopes of 2,000 years of peace. What a wonderful age it would become. And looking down from the plane upon Europe as we moved across it, and Romania being the outermost southeastern member of the EU, I'm travelling right across to the United Kingdom, which is almost the furthest away from Romania. Not quite, because Ireland, of course, is further away. And I thought to myself, well, we in Britain like to think of ourselves as different, which is why we never played golf in this golf club, if you like, the way everybody else did it. We initially thought it was going to be a joke. And then when we realised it wasn't, and it was to our advantage, we begged to be let in. And initially we were rejected by Charles de Gaulle. And then, of course, eventually Ted Heath got us in by skin of our teeth. And ever since then, people like the Daily Express and Daily Mail have been trying to get us out. I mean, have you read some of their articles? The way they talk about Germany as if it was still ruled by Adolf Hitler almost, the way they talk about it. Well, we like to think that we Brits are different. And yet when you look at Britain, we're not united. I mean, a lot of people in Scotland want to separate. A lot of people in Ireland and in Wales wish they were separate from the United Kingdom. So it's all very well, Mr. Cameron and the Eurosceptics in the House of Parliament complaining about the lack of democracy in what's decided in Europe. Well, our voting system is a laughingstock. I mean, the county of Surrey, 50% of people vote Labour, and not one Labour MP is ever elected. They're all Conservative MPs. Isn't that strange? That's democracy, as they call it. And we're ruled by a monarch who's chosen by birth. Personally, I believe in having a republic. I would like to see a United States of Europe with our own president and a single currency throughout the entire EU, the whole 27 countries, including Britain. Okay, at the moment it looks complicated, it looks difficult, it looks to our advantage not to be a member. Well, if we'd been in from the start, we might have been able to influence its construction, if you like, to have avoided some of the current problems. And you can bet your bottom dollar that these Eurosceptics, if ever the pound drops like a brick against the euro, they will be saying we should join, because the Conservative Party tend to be short-termers, as I call them. Mr. Cameron boasts of 1940 being our finest hour, not mentioning that it was the Conservatives who, under Neville Chamberlain, who appeased Hitler. If we'd stopped him in the 1930s, with our Navy and the French Army, we could have stopped him when he marched into the Rhineland. But we chose not to. Anyway, can't change the past. Excuse me. We can look forward to a bright future once we've got over these little local difficulties. But looking down, as I say, from above, it seemed so sensible if all the 500 million people or more used the same currency. Because then anybody trying to sell garden machinery, if you like, on a big scale, in France, say, can safely, in terms of currency and price fluctuations, sell them in Bulgaria without having to be afraid that a week later the currency in the country in which their products are being sold might rise or fall and affect the saleability of their products. And of course you don't have that with the single currency. And equally, the hassle of queuing up to show your passports, we can chuck it out the window. Because we've got to stop thinking that getting rid of passport controls means that all kinds of gangsters and whatever can turn up here. Well, we're not able to stop anybody who's determined to come here anyway, because they've only got to get into Ireland and then they can walk into this country, because there are no border controls with Ireland. So really, there's a lot of hoo-ha and a lot of codswallop talked about immigration. Well, I've waffled on and waffled on. I don't use notes, and I don't use one of those gizmos prompting chart which appears in the distance, which the audience can't see. I don't use one of those. It's all from within myself, my mind, my memories, the things I've read about, my feelings, my emotions, my hopes for the future of Europe. I'm a European. When I go to Romania, I realise that we're all human beings. By the way, Bucharest, Otopeni Airport, is beautiful. Beautiful. Well organised. Doesn't handle as many people as Manchester, but I found it easier to use than Manchester. And that's just a thought, isn't it? That we're all human beings, we're not separate. And that the separation has come about largely by historical accidents, geographical, geological accidents. In fact, we're all members of the human race. So, God bless, while it's still legal in the UK to say God bless. Take care, and bye for now.